Welcome to You, Me, and the Dogs, the podcast where we explore the wonderful world of dog ownership. Join me every Wednesday as my guests and I share personal stories, insights, and experiences, of course, with dogs. Today, Yanko and I are taking a stroll with Genevieve, who has watercolor portrait business with her dog, Winston.
I started with watercolors when, in about 2019, I went to SFA and I went to Benedictine for a BFA, and so bachelor's in fine arts. And I only did like figure drawing, design, all of the core prereqs. And I did oil painting, but I never really dipped my toes into watercolor.
I think it's hard, like watercolors.
Yeah, it is. I'm always learning more things because I'm really self-taught. I didn't really take like a classic course in it. I've always loved painting and drawing, and it wasn't really until I got sick. I just had a lot of issues with eating towards 2019, and so towards the end of 2019, I went to a house for about 3 months, and watercolors are kind of interesting because you can have a portable palette and you can get water anywhere, but if you have a palette and you have maybe even a water pen or a water brush, you can really transport it. So my husband, but fiance, boyfriend at the time, he got me a watercolor palette when I was in the house getting help. And there's not really much you can do when you're recovering. So that's what I did all day, is I just painted and really, it's okay.
Duty call.
Duty. But yeah, I was just painting and trying to recover, and it was a good way for me to process things, and it was easy. It was easy to just pack up, and just portable as in easy portable, not easy.
Right. No, but I'm sure that it was very therapeutic for you.
Yes. Yeah, it was. It's just how I process things. I was very thankful for it.
So tell me, when you got Winston, how did that affect
everything?
Yeah.
Yeah, so after I got out, I was like, maybe I'll work as a receptionist at a pet clinic. It was hard.
Yeah?
That's a hard first job when you're getting out of like a house and recovery. Because the clinic that I worked at had about 4 to 5 doctors.
Uh-huh.
And keeping it straight.
Right.
They also saw exotics. So it wasn't just dogs, cats. It was exotics as well as some farm animals. So there's a lot.
Did you get the farm? They would go, I'm assuming they would go house, right? Like, no?
Some people would just bring their pigs or like their little goats. They were kind of like an emergency clinic too. So you never knew what was walking in the door. But yeah, I was just a receptionist trying to schedule everything.
Delegate everything.
And it was very overwhelming. So I decided to take a break from that. I went into back to school to be a vet tech. And that's an associate's degree.
Uh-huh.
So I did about 2 years of that. And it was clear to me that I love dogs and I love pets, but I have anxiety, and I just, there's a lot of just emotional fatigue that comes in the vet industry.
Yeah, it's very stressful.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming, I would assume that pet parents are not like the calmest.
It depends on where you are and the kind of people you're working with and like the community. You've got, saying goodbyes and farewells in one room, and then you go into the next and it's a puppy, and you have to be very excited and get your mind in the right headspace. And it was just hard for me.
Right.
Yeah. Just because, I've always had depression, and going from that to another room was just difficult, that emotional regulation. So compassion fatigue and just emotionally drained. Be nice to your vets and your vet tech. Look at this little squirrel.
Yanko. That's his weakness, is squirrels.
Winston doesn't even know what a squirrel is. Like, he doesn't know the name squirrel, the word.
That's his weakness.
You can go, what's this? What's this?
He's squirrel. You can literally sit for hours watching a squirrel.
Hey, at least he sits and doesn't whine. So I knew I loved pets, knew I loved clients and like owners, but it wasn't for me. So when I got married, I had just stopped working and I wanted to continue on with pets, and we were married and we didn't really like have any addition coming along anytime soon. So we decided to get a dog. So yeah, that's how Winston came about. We did a lot of research and found the best kind of dog for our situation. We have a small apartment, so we wanted a tiny dog. And then my husband and I were very active, and he has land in Coleman, and he hunts, and he likes to just be out and about. So we wanted kind of a hunting dog breed. So that's how we picked him out.
How did Winston influence your art?
So when we got Winston, or when we picked Winston out, we picked him out and we couldn't have him right away. We had a waiting period. And so instead of focusing on like the figure drawing and things that I was doing, I decided to kind of take my excitement and make a painting of Winston. And so that was the first pet portrait I did.
It's on your website.
Yeah,
that's so cute.
It's so interesting to see that and now see what I'm doing. It's really fun to see the progression, but I actually ended up giving it to my dad, and it was kind of like our announcement that we're getting a puppy.
Oh.
So we did that, and
that's so cute.
Yeah. He's like, "What is this?" I was like, "Oh, hi."
Yeah, cool.
And he said, "I saw a squirrel. I got to get higher." Yeah, so that was my first painting. I wasn't really planning on selling portraits or anything like that.
So how did you get to that point where you thought, oh, this is a business idea?
Yeah. Well, I've always kind of been interested in making cards. I wanted to use my art to have a business, but I never really had the drive or push to do it. So when we moved into the apartment, we got Winston, we started getting into the community there and the pet community, because dog moms and dads were walking around, we meet each other, and it's really, really awesome and really cool to get to know other people around, and especially in an apartment, you get to know people.
What I would say about that is that it makes it easier because you have something in common, like a commonality, and it's just so easy to talk to a dog person for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, because you do have that common thread, and I feel like there's a lot of different people out there, but at least you have that compassion, and you have this thing that you're very passionate about, and it does make it a lot easier to talk to people. So I'm not really a social person.
No, neither am I.
But if it's something to do with dogs, then yes.
Yeah, we could talk for hours about dogs.
Exactly. So I started meeting people, and this girl, she's a TikToker, Malia Gibbs, and she had started an Instagram for her pet or her dog Bentley, and I'm kind of competitive, and so I saw that and I was like, I want to Instagram for my dog. So I started one up, and it kind of started taking off, and when we got to 1K, I wanted to do a giveaway, but I didn't want to spend a lot of money, so I said, I'll give away a portrait of a dog, just like the one I made of Winston the other day, or when we first got him. So I posted it, and it started getting attention, and this is a couple months after we started modeling for Alt Tails Wag with Rachel. Rachel owns it, and she was really sweet, and she saw the giveaway. She reached out. She's like, "You do paintings?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." She's like, "So, wow, do you sell them?" I was like, "Yeah." I can do that. So she's like, okay. And she made an announcement in her model chat, which has a number of people in there. And people started contacting me. And I was like, oh, uh-oh, now I have to make this legit. So I started up another Instagram. I kind of used Winston's as a launch board and started an Instagram, and that gained traction just because it was linked to my dog's account. And so I had like a Google form, and I just started from just that, and I was kind of pushed, and it was the push I needed. So it was really exciting because people started showing interest, and I didn't really think of doing it until all of that happened, but I'm really happy I did. It's really, really special. Sometimes the person ordering it doesn't know exactly what they want to order. And so, for example, there was a really sweet dog. His name's Yoshi Yarn. I scrolled through the Instagram and I saw that they had a lot of reels where his arms were crossed, and it was super cute. And there were a lot of reels where it was like, this is my favorite thing. And that was their favorite thing about their dog, was the way he crossed his paws. So I talked to the client who was ordering it, and I said, what about one of these? And they're like, oh yeah, they love that. That's perfect. So I was like, okay, good. So I really try and make an effort to really get to know the dog or know something special about the dog before I start the process, because it is personal. It's your dog, and if it's a portrait, you want it to resemble them.
Like, I was talking to someone else about how a lot of people, they don't see the value in certain art. So like, for example, portraits, like, how do I validate paying $100-$200 for this painting?
Yeah.
While I have a camera that I could just snap a picture. It's not that the photo doesn't get it, right? It's like, it doesn't have like a human touch to it.
Artists have a different way of seeing the world, and I think that brings value to it. It's the process, it's the attention, it's the emotions put into it. It's still hard to justify, even me, purchasing a painting.
Right.
And I paint.
Yeah.
Like, well, like, I could do that, or maybe I could get it somewhere other way, but it's not the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as having something that spent hours and hours and hours and has little tiny details and brush strokes and dots.
Yeah.
There's something really special about it.
It's hard to find unique things with like TJ Maxx and all that, and Amazon,
Well, it's hard to differentiate sometimes, like, from far away, a print versus an original. Just technology and printing. They can print on watercolor paper. They can print on these things that give it dimension and texture. But
what I realized with a lot of the people that I'm interviewing, they're all artists in some way, shape, or form.
yeah, art is very all-encompassing.
Yeah. I wonder if there is a commonality between certain dog owners and the way that they are because they're artists versus someone that doesn't have an art background and the way they treat their dog.
So there's different personalities, right?
Yeah.
And artists, in the broad sense of the term, they're more flexible thinkers,
Yeah.
right? And especially in training, you have to be very quick on your toes. You have to be able to think about different ways to do things. It can't always be very straightforward. And it's interesting because I was the one who trained Winston. My husband's a mechanical engineer, so he's very like...
Right, like, it's the book is right.
And yeah, he didn't grow up with dogs, but he's very like, yes, no, right? There's no like, well, maybe if we can do it this way, it'll come out a different result. So I've kind of had to like help him out with reinforcing different things with Winston, and it's been very good practice if we do have a kid in the future, like how to raise the kid and like communicate. But I think the way that I was able to train Winston would be completely different than if he was by himself with my husband. I think it would be a completely different dog.
Yeah. Do you think Winston is more like you or like you?
He's more like me. He loves my husband more.
Right.
But he's more like me because he's spaz. But he's got some personalities of both. But he's his own little boy. He's crazy. Yeah, he's definitely a very short attention span. But that's a spaniel in him.
Right.
So that's what I say.
And you were talking about how you had 3 dogs. You've had dogs also. And so I wonder if for you, do you feel like Winston has an upper hand?
I think the best dog we've ever had was Bonnie. Bonnie just passed, but she's a German wire hair pointer.
Okay.
Full bred, but we got her from the Humane Society. And we didn't know she was full bred or anything. But when we got her, I was pretty young, and my parents are teachers, and she had she had full reign. So she just kind of figured it out. And there was not a lot of, the hand-holding or training, but she was just she was a good dog.
Right.
She would trim her own nails, which was interesting. We never trimmed her nails. Never trimmed her nails.
Okay.
And she would they were always short. Yes. She when she passed, she probably had no dental disease. That's one of the unicorns, right?
Yeah.
Where you didn't really put in too much work. Then you've got my other dog, Odin, who came in to our lives when I was having a lot of issues and I was having a lot of anxiety, and we had 2 attempted break-ins when he was a puppy. He had mange, he had there were just a lot of things that added up, and now he has anxiety.
Right.
Of course. And so he's been harder.
Right.
He's a very good boy, but he has a lot of social anxiety and all of these things. And sometimes I feel guilty because I was young and I wasn't focusing on training him. And my parents didn't have the time to train him. They just had this perfect dog, and then they had him when he was insane. Even when we got Winston, Odin, they didn't get along. And it wasn't that they had interaction. Odin couldn't handle the fact that he was even there. It was just a lot of anxiety and fear that Odin had just around people and strangers. When we got Winston, I wanted to avoid that. I didn't want that situation for my dog because that's not healthy, and it's really sad. I didn't have the ability to correct or do when I was younger with our family dog, Odin. So as a, newlyweds and as my own person in my own apartment with my own dog, I was like, this dog, I'm gonna train him, and he's gonna be able to go places. He's gonna be able to do things. So I think that he does have more of an advantage because I was able to spend the time to train him and socialize him the right way. He's still a puppy and he still acts a fool, but he's not afraid. There's no fear. There's no aggression. There's a lot of things that I was able to avoid because I was able to kind of be cognizant of it and really train him to do these things and put him in the different situations that built his confidence. He's not scared. You saw, he's he brushes things off really quickly.
He's pretty confident, pretty I'm here.
Yeah, he's unapologetic. Odin's not hopeless, though.
No.
I think that's another big thing. My parents were contemplating maybe finding him another home when Bonnie passed because he was really depressed and he still wasn't socializing with Winston. He was so scared. He can't go around other people, and they're not wanting to bring another dog into the situation. So it's really tempting in that situation to have this reactive dog and feel hopeless, right?
Yeah.
And feel like there's no way to fix the situation, especially he's 7, 6 or 7. It's a Great Pyrenees and a lab mix. So he's a big dog. He's a big dog. He can be scary. They were thinking about handing him over to someone. A big thing was Winston would come over and they couldn't be in the same room. We decided to start really focusing on Odin and Winston together, and we started out with them separated by a gate. And then Odin would have a muzzle, and we would still separate them. And so we slowly tried and worked at it. It took a year. And finally, they started playing and being in the same room. And now they can wrestle and, like mouth, but no one's getting aggressive. Odin is not scared of him. If he has too much, he'll go to his crate and give himself a little time out. But when that first happened, I was crying. I was so relieved because you have that kind of you feel hopeless, you feel frustrated, and to have it resolved. Now, it's not resolved with people, but even just with Winston, that's
and you saw progress.
Oh my gosh. Now they love each other. Winston's always loved him.
How did that make you feel? I know that you in your website talk a lot about mental health, and so I'm sure that was this is how dogs and humans could coexist and make this awesome bond.
Yeah. High school, I had a lot of depression and anxiety. I mean, that's kind of when all the things happen in high school. So when we got him, he was more supposed to be that support, that company, that companion animal for me. And unfortunately, all of that kind of got transferred to him. And there were some incidents where I was home alone and he was home with me, and someone tried to break in. And so there were these traumatic instances where he experienced fear, right? So
and not feeling safe, and
so it increased my anxiety. So now he's anxious and I'm anxious, and we were feeding off of each other. And so it can work that way, and then it can work the other way. Now to have a dog that I'm encouraged to go out and be social, and I'm meeting people. I'm traveled to Atlanta, and I met with 3 other Instagram people. And I met a couple others just along the way. And that's all because of Winston. So there was that isolation that I experienced in my younger years where I had a dog. It was like a companion, but it was also it was difficult. And now I have this animal that opened so many doors, not only in my art and my work and my social life, but just emotional healing as well. I have therapy. I sit with my therapist on Zoom, and I have Winston. He does not leave my lap, and that's also a form of therapy. So it's so exciting that you were mentioning kind of what you're focusing on, because that's what Rachel and I, the owner of All Tails Wag, we kind of came together because of Winston. I went and drove 8 hours to meet her by myself with Winston and stayed for a week and a half. I had never met her before, and we had a blast.
If you could think of a question that you would love the audience to answer for you, it could be anything you want.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Need to be prepped. Think on the spot. A question that I want your audience to answer.
Yeah. Or you would want to know.
Yeah. I think when I had Odin, if someone had asked me if I could see a relationship with a dog, or companionship with a dog in any other way, it would be very difficult for me to imagine a different relationship with a dog, right? With Odin, because Odin was he wasn't a burden, but he was very limiting. He made a lot of limits. And so if you do have a pet that's limiting your experiences, how much more could you experience and live if you had either the time to train them, or had a pet with that temperament or that upbringing of being able to explore and be in different environments. So whether it's a pet that you already have, or maybe you're looking into getting a pet, think about, what can you do now to open those doors? Because I'm really interested and excited to work with Odin still. I'm not giving up on him, and I don't think any pet deserves to be given up on. So if you do have a pet, or you're thinking of getting a pet in the future, it's really important, I think, now, especially now that, you can be aware how you expose them. So if you were to give them those experiences or that training or whatever they need, how much more will your world be able to open? Yeah. Because I would have never imagined me traveling and meeting people and starting a business just because of a dog, right?
Yeah.
So it's exciting. There's a lot of opportunities, and I think everyone can have that. And it's just finding the right resources and this work,
and putting yourself out there.
Yeah, because Winston almost made me. Once you start having that mentality of, okay, I want my dog to be able to do these things, then you have to then also be able to do
Exactly.
So yeah, you have to put yourself out there if you want them to be able to be out and about.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to know more about our guests, read the show notes down below. Please hit the subscribe button if you liked us, and it would be even better if you would leave us a review. See you next Wednesday.